Okay. It's 5:31, and I will call the October 7th, 2024 Community Preservation Committee to order. The first item is public comment. No public comment. Second item, moving on to staff items of draft minutes from last meeting, September 9th.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes from the September 9th, 2024 meeting as submitted.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved unanimously. Old business, moving on, continuation from last meeting, a request for $165,772 under historic preservation for the purpose of cemetery preservation at Cedarville Cemetery in the Old Town Burying Ground. From my notes last time, I think there were 3 getbacks that we asked from you. One was related to getting the town manager's signature on the application. Then there were questions about contingency costs being part of the application, and then hazardous materials, I believe, getting an estimate on those. And do we have any update on those?
Yep, so the application has been signed by the town manager, and the entity in charge of the cemeteries is the town manager's office through the cemetery commissioners. Then in terms of the contingency, I spoke with our facilities director. So he said there is a 5% contingency built in, but that, if we wanted to up that to 10, that, that would be great too. But when he put out the bid to the professional estimator, he told them to estimate it on the high side. So he thought the full 220 was already high. He thinks it should come in lower than that.
Okay.
In terms of lead abatement,
I'd like to ask you a question about the 5%, because I didn't bring the document. I don't know if you have it. I didn't bring it tonight.
The application?
I thought the document that we received said there was none.
so in the budget page, on the first page, it had a contingency, and then in the back where it said missing, it had contingency. So we
But you
went
are right
over
there.
it to say, no, the contingency of 5% was in there.
So it wasn't missing, so the
It was
the
not
back of the
missing.
document was misstated. Okay, thank you.
Yes, exactly. And then for abatement, they said basically they wouldn't do any lead abatement if they found any on railings. That it would only be something structural that was going to be inside a building. But for outdoor railings, when they sandblast it, if there was lead, they would just be using whatever special material it is going back
Vacuum it up
over
or
it,
whatever.
that they wouldn't actually abate it. So that's why it wasn't in the estimate.
So I don't quite understand that. In order to sandblast it, they are going to have to abate because it is lead.
They do it outdoors?
I don't, you cannot, in the state of Massachusetts, you cannot remove lead-based paint without some means by collecting it. Okay, you can't do it anymore. It's been quite a while, but they changed the law quite a few years ago. Even if the outside of your house is being sanded, if it has lead-containing paint, you actually have to put plastic and enclose the entire house because you cannot let the paint out into the environment anymore. So I don't understand that answer.
Okay, maybe I just didn't understand then the answer from the.
They're going to take the railings off. They're going to bring it into the shop.
Yes,
They're going to sandblast, as I understand it.
yeah,
There was most likely lead-based paint, given the age of these,
yes.
which means they're going to have to create a special, which they may be doing, but it wasn't clear in the document. They're going to have to create a special containment area. The individuals are going to have to be masked, and they're going to have to collect it, and then they have to get rid of it. And to get rid of it it's not cheap. Now, maybe all that's in there, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
In fact, what I found, again, like in the back where it said 0 on the contingency, it said there was nothing in there on the, I forget the wording, but it said they had not, and that happens, I've seen that happen because it gets difficult to price it, because it can be expensive. But if it's not priced in there, then I think there has to be a contingency for it. I don't think the 5 is, is a general number that's, for other quoted areas and so forth. My concern is this has come to us once before, it was misquoted, project wasn't done, it's back in front of us again. I'm concerned there aren't enough funds there to cover the project as scoped. So, we talked about that the last meeting, they said if they don't have enough funds, they'll just do one of the cemeteries and not both. You know, I don't like signing something that said we're gonna do 2 cemeteries, knowing that there's, at least I believe, there's potential that this can't be done for this amount of money, and they're only gonna do 1 cemetery. Then it'll be back to us for funds for the other, and, so,
What if we made the contingent 10%?
Yeah, if we wanted to.
Is that a way around it, Jeff?
So if it's already high.
well, we
Then
can.
we wouldn't spend it if, in other words, this, the way I look at it, like, perhaps it has already been figured into it, but just not itemized, you know, and that's why, you know.
Well, it's stated, no, it's like the contingency, it's stated in the back, it's not there.
So, you know, there's that, you know, there might be some misunderstanding in the whole project that this has to take place between the person that's telling you it's not a problem and it being a problem, or it's maybe smartest for us to just go with the 10% contingent instead of 5%, and if it doesn't get spent, it gets returned to our fund anyway, and it seems like that would probably be more than enough to cover the contingents of that. You know, I mean, because I think everybody, at least at the last meeting, seemed to be in favor of seeing the full project completed. You know, the gate at Grove Street as well as the fencing at Cedarville. So if that's what it just seems to me a very simple fix in terms of, like, it's not money we have to spend. It's just giving them that flexibility.
And you said it was already high, the
Yeah, the
facilities
facilities director
said
felt
it
that
was-
the estimate was high, but when I mentioned, possibly doing, 10% of the full
Maybe
amount,
add it on
he
to
thought, well, I mean, there's never any harm in having extra money in
Yeah,
case something
we
happens.
clearly have it
And
here.
then, it just gets returned, if the quotes come in a lot lower.
So then it would be 225, or what was it? No, well, I guess it would, yeah. Would you do the contingency off of the whole project cost or the?
I did it off the whole project cost, well, I did like 200,000,
Yeah.
instead of, that's an extra 20,000, just a round number. So if the request would be 187,772, as opposed to 165.
187, what'd you say it was? 187,
187,772.
772, okay.
Were there more than one? Was there more than one bid?
So no, this is just the professional estimator cost for when we go out to bid. We wanted to make sure that we would have enough when we went out to bid, that we wouldn't be coming back again.
Okay.
And then the other outstanding was just maintenance that we discussed. So I reached out to Paul Tilton, the director for the DPW, and he said their maintenance is really just landscaping. He said they can absolutely check on the condition of the railings and the gates, but he said if it's something as sensitive as it being so historic, then if there was maintenance, they'd probably have to call a professional in.
Okay.
Like how Jennifer had mentioned that, they wouldn't really have the expertise to manage something like that, but they could absolutely inspect it each year and let us know when it needs to be redone.
And then wouldn't it really be wouldn't that at that point really be the thing for him to do then, to take that to the cemetery board, what is it called again?
Cemetery
Cemetery
commissioners.
Cemetery commissioners
Yeah.
to,
And it wouldn't be as expensive. Like, this is a full process where you're removing them, sandblasting them, doing abatement, and redoing them and reinstalling them. Whether next time it's just like an epoxy style paint. I don't know. It preserves it so that they do it on site and it's just in the areas. So it's a lot less expensive to maintain going forward.
I like Bob's approach there to just kind of, let's just, I'm of the opinion to just add in the extra contingency just to cover this, and then, any other comments from the members? So, Let me ask you a procedural question. If we wanted to make an exception and vote on this, because they want to get this for town meeting, which is next month, or they want this on the agenda for town meeting, would we have to make a motion to have an exception to the current policy, or we can just, okay?
Because it's not it's just a
Yeah, it's
policy,
just
it's not a
okay.
formal, it's not a statute or a law.
And we don't have any other applications? You mentioned that there might be one coming, that
So
you think?
since our last meeting, the Nye Family Museum reached out to me, just looking for, they're filling out an application. They didn't let me know what it was about or how much they were asking for, but they wanted to know about the plans and studies that could relate to their project so that they could reference them in support of their project. But I don't know when they're filing, so their deadline would be December.
So we
And
don't
that
have-
would be for annual, because they will not be able to get it in this point for a special.
Is that for like more like an administrative type of deal or something?
I didn't think so. I got the feeling it was a full application.
An application, but you said it was for their plans or something? Or?
Oh, no, were asking me for historic plans, the local comprehensive
from-
plan,
oh.
like the town plan, so that they could reference them in the application.
And that's over in the over there on Old County. Is that where?
Yeah.
Because we've already done some over there.
We help them restore
Green,
the building that had been a mill.
Yes,
Yeah.
they
So-
received 75,000 probably 5 years ago,
And so they're looking for something else
something in addition to that.
in addition to that over there. Okay.
I didn't get any more information
What,
than
what
that.
it is? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
So I would suggest that we vote on this, just given the fact that we don't have any other applications before us. This is time sensitive, and quite frankly, we have the
Do you
money.
need a motion
That's
to
what-
do that?
Well, that's what, no, we
We don't
don't.
need a motion to do that.
Nope.
Yep, all right.
Well, I mean, I want, I mean, again, like I said, I'm stating, I think that, I mean, I support this project, I mean, in a sense, I believe in it, but there's no way that I would ever vote for this project to be, we went through a procedure to change this out. Everybody here talked about, oh, this is what we gotta do, this is what we gotta do, we gotta do this, you're gonna do everything in January. Oh, yeah, we can make an exception. I think it's a poor example to start out that the very first application we get is to go and do it as an exception. That's why I said there was no problem with it before, leave it alone the way it is. This would have flowed right through, there would have been no problem. But to go and do your first project that you do after you change the whole structure of how you said you wanted to do this, you know, goes in as an exception. I just think that this is exactly what I was talking about in terms of why you don't, you know, make the changes the way that we did. Because, you know, you set a very bad precedent with the very first application you get in to go and do it as an exception. I believe, and I would request that there would be a vote, because I think that, you know, it needs to be, even as an exception, needs to be voted on. You know, because again, it's still going to the Board of
I
Selectmen
have
as.
no problem with that.
No, that's what I mean, because you're still gonna be going to the Board of Selectmen to request that this goes in. That should be shown that there was a vote taken by the CPC, whether it be, even if it was 100%, you know, it still should be go, whether it's an exception or not.
Okay, I make a motion that we exercise our ability to make an exception to the rule that applications are stockpiled until January before being voted on.
I'll approve. Okay, I'll second that, yeah.
The discussion, before we vote. I agree with Darrell in that I support the project. The process, we're never gonna use the process. You know, we spent a lot of time talking about it, but you know what? We always have considered them when they come in and dribble in. There will always be time sensitive. There will always be an opportunity, ooh, I gotta get it on the, boy, it'd be great if I get it on the special town meeting in the fall. Most years is a special town meeting. So, and what's bothering me, every time we have one now, we're gonna have to vote?
Well,
To have an
Oh,
exception?
I mean, he suggested we make an exception.
You know, put on our agenda to
Yeah.
discuss changing the rules because.
I think we should.
Because, let me just say, the only reason we ever did this
Yeah.
was because we were, and I don't know whether you guys were under the same misunderstanding that I was, But it was my impression when we took that vote that we were going to be broke. And that we didn't want to tie ourselves to a project, say now, and miss out on one that came in December because we weren't going to have the money for everything. Now that we know that essentially we're as flush as we ever were, I'm with you, Darrell. Let's dump the exception.
And
rule.
again, and that's.
So my point is that you have the option to do that now. You didn't have the option before. So this is, hold on, Darrell, let me finish. So there's three things that you can't predict. You can't predict whether or not there's going to be a special town meeting every year. It's becoming more traditional, but we don't know that. We have no idea how many applications are going to come in. So we've had one come in. That seems to be a little bit of an anomaly compared to past years. And we have a lot more money than we thought we were going to have. So there was three things right there that we had no idea about. And the reason I changed the policy, or I was supportive of it, was that we at least had this option. So if we had to vote on something, we could, but if we didn't feel like it, we knew we had other applications, we could just wait. Now you have that. You didn't have it before.
And I agree with you. I mean,
Well, we always had it before. We could have just do what we're doing now. We could vote and say, you know what? We're gonna hold this.
but I agree with Bob when, he says, I mean, honestly, and I'm probably gonna get blasted with this, but the town did us a disservice when they came in here and somebody sat right where Leanne was and told us, it says, you're not gonna have any money for a couple of years. Poor job in knowing what was going to be going on in the future when that's your job. To then all of a sudden to come out to now and say again, I mean, what I feel bad for is the Sandwich Glass Museum, who had to sit through that meeting, find out they couldn't get any money, had to look for other ways to get money. They deserve to get their money. We stopped them from getting what they needed to do to support their program. They needed it just as much as anybody else. But, you're right. I mean, in terms of the town was saying, you're not going to have any money for a couple of years. So I understand where you're coming from there, because honestly, I mean, yes, I've been on this committee for a long time. Probably pretty much, I mean, other than Steve, I've been on here for, longer than anybody. And, and I've seen different projects and different things come through, different times of the year. A lot of them, obviously, there was mostly going on for the regular town meeting because, we said you didn't have as many special town meetings. It's only been probably more recently that the second town meeting, the special one has been being more and more frequent. So, yes, but again, still, we still knew back even then, to a certain degree, that, this was always going to be potentially happening. And again, it never was an issue before. Yeah, you never know how things come in. Sometimes, we'd sit here and we'd have 3 items or whatever come up on an agenda. Other times, we wouldn't have meetings for months and months and months. For a lot of times we never even met this time of year almost because there were no things coming in. You just never know. You can't predict what's going to come in and what's not going to come in. But I mean, again, I wouldn't. To me, I'm not using that as a driving force to say, yeah, we need to make this change, because I mean, I'm on other committees that come in that ask for money for different things and all out there. And to be honest, we're getting more. Same with that. I used to hardly ever have those meetings. Now we almost have a meeting, once a month. There's a lot more, people out there, looking for funds to be able to do, what they need to do, whatever their project is, and it has to fit that certain criteria. But again, I explained it back then. We went through that, like I said, that whole long process of, number of meetings to go through to make the changes. And what's the first thing we do? We're doing it as an exception.
But I don't understand, what's the effect of that, other than just I guess anecdotally, yes, okay, the first time we had an application, we ended up making an exception to it. But why would we not make an exception to this tonight? There's no.
First or the third.
Right, I mean, I don't understand what the consequence is. The only person that gets hurt is the applicant.
Exception, whether it's with the first application or the third application.
Because it's exactly what I had said, that, this is the reason why you left it.
Right. There's going to be times where we're going to be happy that we had this policy in place, I think.
Vote for it anyway, so it's not, but I'm just making the point, because I think that it needs to be brought out there that we made changes and we spent time on a process that didn't need to be done. And if we had left it alone.
Based upon this one application, I'd say you're right. But next year, we could have 7 applications that come in, and I'd be wishing that we had this policy in place.
And that's the reason why
no.
you didn't, and that's the reason why you didn't make the change, because if you would have wanted to put it on the special town meeting, you would have put it on the special town meeting. You wouldn't be making exceptions all the time for these ones that are gonna be coming in at the end of the, towards the end of the year to be a special town
If
meeting.
special town meetings become more frequent, then yes, I mean, that'll always be an issue, that'll always be a challenge that we're faced with. And if it doesn't work for us, then we just go back to the old way. I mean, this is a procedural discussion, so we can put it on an agenda for another time, but
Stick to the matter.
I guess the question is whether or not the application itself merits an exception. We have a motion on the table.
Well, yeah,
A
well,
motion in a
but then
second.
last week, last meeting, when I tried to bring it up, you said, no, we're not calling to discuss it.
I
yet."
said,
But yes-
Darryl,
but
I
ye-
said-
But yes, but the thing is, now you're saying you wanna have this going
You know what,
forward.
can I just ask a question though, Daryl? You seem angry.
Yeah, because the thing is,
But
we
you know what?
didn't
It's
have
like-
to waste that
but
time to make
I,
the
I get that, but you know, we're all in the same boat with you. You know, it's not, like, I get where you're coming from. But on the other hand, I also understand why we all made that decision, based on information that ultimately became,
You don't wanna hold up a
inaccurate
project.
later.
If you told me we were gonna have
Made that
$3 million,
decision.
yeah.
It was based on, it wasn't, I don't think it's you against us or us against them. It's really, that's what at the time was what we all saw as a prudent way to approach what could be very limited funding so that everybody who applied got an equal chance.
And it wasn't first come,
Be
first
laid on the
served.
table at the end, and then with limited funding, be able to say, okay, but now what's the most deserving? Or can we chop it up in a different way than they've asked for it? We now don't, that's not really necessary. But as, to Matt's point, in a way, that rule doesn't tie our hands, it just gives us that option. If we were overloaded with applications, we could say, let's wait. And now here we are not. We're back as
And I-
things were like in the old days, so we're going to do it like in the old days. The only thing is we have to acknowledge we're making the exception.
I described it as an insurance policy of sorts when we did this last fall. And if we make an exception to every single one of these, honestly, it doesn't make a difference to me. I just want the ability to say, and to Jeff's point, yes, you could tell the applicant, we're going to continue this discussion, we're going to continue this discussion, but to them, I'd rather have them know up front, hey, this is the new policy, so if you apply in August, you might not hear a decision until January or February. But I don't want to string them along for months at a time, because,
Part of the policy was if they put the application in, even then, we were gonna hold it until January or February.
We
So they
would.
weren't even gonna be sitting here giving us a presentation. So now
well,
you're
that's what I'm saying, no, I'm saying in the old
Was that
system.
they were going to give their presentation, and that we were going to say, thank you for your presentation. We're going to, take that under advisement, and when we, take all of these applications in January and look at them collectively, we will consider what you have told us tonight. That was, it wasn't that we were going to wait until January and have 10 meetings, 10 hearings for the 10 applications. We were going to go through the process, just like we have, for example, with this one, but we were just going to say, okay, thank you, we have it all, we're going to take that under advisement, and in January, we're going to see how much funding we have and how many applications we have, and we will make our decisions accordingly. The beauty is, though, Daryl, it's like, you don't really have to be angry because, in a sense, you're going to be able to see things done the way that you hope that they would be done, which is, as they come in, we unless we get overwhelmed. But on the other hand, if we get overwhelmed, we also have something else to fall back on. We have if all of a sudden, we had something come up where...
This is a strange circumstance that we have a lot of money and no applications, really. I don't know what...
I don't know whether you
explains
guys,
that.
you know this, Daryl, you've been a part of these meetings, but I'm not sure if you guys have ever been sitting at the table when the town has come to us and said, look there's some plum preservation lands
Right.
that they're not on the market, but that we want you to put in the back of your head so that, you're ready if and when they ever do come on the market.
That's right.
And, that could happen next week.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they could come out and say,
Private
we need $2.5
landowner
million
decides-
Yes,
for it,
that's
and
right.
it's do or die.
Right.
If we don't move, we're not going to be able to get this plum. So this also, in a way, if that were to say happen and wipe out most of our funding, we could still use the other funding to say, all right, well, it's very limited, so in January we'll decide how to spend what's left of it. So overall, I don't think that it's, you know, really a bad policy. I mean, it's maybe not necessary because, as we see, it's sort of working as the way it always did in the old days. But, you know, I guess that's all I have for discussion period of the.
Well, there is still a motion out on the table, so there's a motion and a second that we would vote on, that make an exception to the current policy to vote on this tonight.
Do we have to call a personal vote because there's only limited quorum, or?
So, all in favor, signal aye. Aye. All opposed?
I'm abstaining.
4-0-1.
So we vote on this tonight then.
Okay, so,
Dan, was it just a majority for this one?
Yes.
A majority of the quorum?
That's right.
It's just a majority of the quorum because this is not a regulatory matter. It's not law, it's not statute.
That's it,
Yeah.
I'm just asking, because
For
the
clarification.
next vote we're gonna take though on the application,
Is majority of the quorum
majority of the quorum also?
present? Yeah.
So does this group ever,
They have no special.
so this group never needs a majority of the total membership?
Correct.
So this is always just a majority of the quorum, every decision this group makes?
Yes.
Interesting.
Because we're just such a small piece of it, really. 'Cause then the selectmen can say, we don't like the idea of doing this, and they might not,
Right.
you know.
No, but
sign off.
that doesn't have any,
Or-
the fact of a big piece or small piece doesn't have anything to do with it. It has to do with the
Statute.
regulatory.
No, I know that, but I'm just saying the reasoning behind that, I think, is because there are so many other steps involved that, you know, ours is. in a big
Layers.
But you could argue that in many other places too. I'm just surprised, that's all. That there are no decisions that require us
That's right.
to have, you know, you don't have to have the whole board there, but
No, but-
it still could have been 5 required,
Yes.
But it is
which
what
would
it
have
is.
been 100% of the quorum, but that's never required. Interesting.
Well, I think it's like what Bob says, you know, all we do is we just pass it along to the Board of Selectmen, then they decide to put it, you know, they can decide, but it's still coming from the town or whatever, where the money's coming out of in terms of the CPC. So we don't really,
Yeah.
It's that one.
we just like an oversight committee, I guess.
okay, so
So, you know, so they can, so it's just really an advisory role then this group has.
In a sense, yeah.
Well, more in a sense, that's all it is, because the selectmen can agree with the decision or not agree with the decision.
Yeah, the selectmen can choose not to put it on the warrant, but the selectmen cannot put a CPA article on the warrant without this committee's approval.
all right.
So you have to almost work in conjunction with each other.
To get it approved.
Yeah. So they can't take a CPA
Right, if
matter
they
and put it
wanted
on
a
a warrant.
town-
No, but I understand that, so the advisory, but it's, okay, so if this group did send it forward, they can't put it on it.
Right.
CPC can't go on it.
That's right.
This is the first step.
That's right.
Yeah.
So do we need to take a vote on expending or adding the 10% contingency?
Or could we just vote on the
One vote
180s?
On the 187?
Yeah, you can
So-
do it as one vote, but just list the figure that you're going to do.
So I will make a motion then that we accept the application from the Sandwich Historical Commission for cemetery preservation at Cedarville Cemetery and Old Town Burying Ground for $187,772.
I will second that.
So
Do we have further discussion?
what is the,
So it's gone from 165.
yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, it's gone from,
Went up 20,000.
it went up 20,000 against the 165.
Correct.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signal aye. Aye. Was that an aye?
Aye.
Okay. Any, all opposed? Okay, so 4-0-1 again. And any other matters not reasonably anticipated?
I have just a question, and at the town meeting, when the CPC items are presented, do you also announce how the CPC voted?
Yes.
And that's just,
Posted in the warrant.
is it, but just that it went forward, or it went forward with this many votes?
I usually, last year, I think I said the votes.
You said the vote, so we typically have unanimous votes, but when we don't, we always list when it's not unanimous.
Yep.
It's interesting because given the fact that if we don't approve it, it doesn't get to the
That's right.
selectmen.
Not gonna be anything else.
Sort of a moot point whether
It is.
we vote.
I think
or
it's
not.
just in the interest of
We have to.
transparency.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think
We
people
wanna
like to
know
see if
whether it
there's
was
any,
unanimous or whether it was split.
yeah, and you see other boards doing that at town meeting. I know
The
finance does,
committee,
yeah.
Politics and everything.
I think it's just transparency. People want to know if there was if it was.
Absolutely.
I mean, 3-2 versus 5-0, I think makes a difference sometimes for people. And they're, oh, what was the point of scrutiny?
And may change their opinion, the selectmen's opinion too.
Right.
I have no other matters.
Yeah.
Make a motion
I don't either.
to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Thank you.